Hello friends, welcome to my little corner of the internet, and today we have got this beauty. Wow, I have never seen one of these in person. If you don't know, this is the Silvertone Twin 12 model. I believe it's 1484, probably the most famous or well-known version of this amplifier. These have a massive cult following, very, very cool. In fact, I know a pedal that was created to try and emulate the sound of this. They've got a very unique tone, as I've heard, but I've never played one before. And yeah, this is in for a little bit of a tune-up. So let's flip it over here and just kind of look at it from the top. So we're working with here. Now, the tube layout is kind of interesting. So it's got two 6L6s. Looks like we have one replaced power tube socket here. And you can see it looks like they literally dremeled out the hole to make it larger to fit the more modern tube socket there. So that's kind of unfortunate. And then this is a 12AX7 slot here. We've got two weird tubes that I'm not familiar with. 6CG7 tubes here and here, and then three 12AX7s. We've got a can cap here. This is a, let's see. It's like a 20, 10, and a 5, I think, is what that says. Very unique. Two transformers here, and I don't see any date codes or anything on them. Now, I think, if I remember correctly, I remember hearing that the transformers on these are kind of weird, and obviously this one looks quite funky. Very small, compact little guy. I think this is actually, I might be wrong, and you guys can correct me, or I'll probably find out right after I post this video, or finish this video, but I think this is actually the power transformer, and they've got some kind of voltage doubling thing going on the inside. I feel like I remember reading that online forever ago. And then you can also see it's very similar to my Gretsch Dual Twin, which has the pots mounted to the back of the chassis here. So it's kind of two parts of the chassis, and they're clamped together. And as a result, the pots are not in great shape. They're quite rusted and gross, and I'm sure very, very dirty. So that is something we'll have to look at. Now, this project is, it's going to have to be, within reason, because these things, I can already see, I mean, this could end up being a ton of work. We haven't even flipped it over yet, just because of how these were built. They were not built to last, right? They were not built to be around for a very long time. This is the spring tank, by the way. I don't know if I pointed that out, which is just crazy. And yeah, so, these aren't worth that much money. They do have cult following, but they're not worth that much money. And yeah, let's see what's on the other side. I'm a little nervous, to be honest, because yeah, there's only so much you really want to pump into these. You got to be reasonable, right? All right, let's go ahead and flip her over here. Oh gosh, wow. Holy moly. Okay. Wow, let's take a gander here. So the construction on this side reminds me a lot, actually, of the Gretsch Dual Twin. Zoom in a little bit there. Resistors everywhere. First glance, looks basically all original. I don't see any resistors that have been changed. All the original caps here. Very bizarre construction methods. You can see there's electrical tape joining two caps together here. One interesting thing is I noticed there's seam lines in all these resistors, these carbon comps. So this is a different type of carbon comp, and what I've always perceived is lower quality than the typical ABs you see in fenders of this era from the 60s. The Gretsch Dual Twin actually had all high quality AB resistors in it. This appears to have some other type with a very clear mold line on all of the resistors. Maybe they're about the same quality, I'm not sure, but I've always perceived these as lower quality because they look lower quality visually. Lots going on here. Not even sure how to interpret all of this. These, I'm guessing, are cathode bypass caps, which would make sense. And let's see what else we got here. Move on down. There's lots of shielded cable here to do these crazy long run lines. You can see all over here and coming up from up to the pots through the grommets there. Two very small leads right here. I'm not sure if you can see that or not. I'm assuming that's from the reverb. Pilot light. I think this is a choke, not a transformer. Continuing down, we've got this crazy like cardboard center divider with riveted on turret, or not turret, terminal strips everywhere, which is kind of crazy, and obviously not the highest quality work in the world. You can see this thing definitely looks like a homebrew, even though this is all factory as far as I can tell. And these caps all look factory, the red ones at least. So I think this is probably 100 microfarad 50 volts. This is probably our bias cap. And then just a bunch of caps here. So we got 100 microfarad 150 volt. Looks like 2 of them. Yep, 2 of them there. And then this is, looks like another 100 microfarad 150 volt. That's interesting. Don't see that value very often. So, and then this is also another 100 microfarad 150 volt. So we got 4 of those. And then we got the can cap over here too. Not sure if you'll be able to see that or not. Right in there. So probably just have to install some discrete capacitors to replace that. I'm not sure anybody makes a can cap that size, and it is riveted on, which is a massive pain in the butt. So we'll probably have to do that. What else we got going on here? So 2-prong, original 2-prong is still there. Man, this this is a bit of a mess. Holy cow. I'm not sure this is factory or not, but it looks terrible. Let's zoom in. It looks quite bad. This crazy little bracket here helping support this. Diodes. So basically this thing is a mess. And yeah, like I was saying a minute ago, this is, you know, the potential to be an absolutely insane project as far as time invested goes, because it's just not built right to be easily repaired. These are not meant to last forever. These are, you know, cheap amps that were expected to run for somebody who's just learning guitar, really, and then, you know, they'd move on to a Fender or something. Basically how it was positioned as far as I know with Sears. So if you don't know, these are part of the Sears catalog from the 60s. But anyways, very cool amplifier. I've never seen one of these. They have a cult following, like I said, and I'm sure it sounds great because, you know, these weird amps tend to sound great. I mean, they sound different, but they tend to sound great. So cool. Let's let me pull out the schematic, get a closer look. I'm going to do some more inspecting, and then I'll bring you guys back in once I decide what the next steps are. All right, so I have gone through the amplifier and just kind of took note of everything I saw, and I've got a decent sense of the next steps here as far as what I want to start with. So the first things first is we're going to replace all of the electrolytics here. So we've already got one swapped one here. The rest of the red caps are all original as far as I can tell. These are the bypass caps. I've got mod 25 microfarad 50 volts I use all the time for the bypass caps, and it will reach that span, so that's fine. This is always fun to show the difference in tech nowadays. You can see this is actually a more capable cap than this cap here, but is significantly smaller. So we've got those, just 2, so no big deal there. And then this is the bias circuit cap. So this is a 100 microfarad 50 volt, and I've got a 100 microfarad 100 volt, again, mod cap to replace that. So that's good to go. The rest are 100 microfarad 150 volt, which I do not have. So we will be getting 100 microfarad, and then I'm not sure if mod makes a 150 volt or 200 volt, 300 volt, whatever. It doesn't really matter. We can go above the voltage rating. That's completely fine. So we'll be getting 4 of those to replace those 4 caps there. And then as far as all of the kind of coupling caps here, all these little brown guys, we'll test those for leaky voltage, but I'm going to do that at a later date. That's going to be kind of a next step. We're going to do this in phases, I think. So I just want to make sure everything else is more or less okay, and the amp is, you know, safe to turn on and all of that. And then once it's running, we can start getting voltages off of the remaining stuff that still is a question mark. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this. It's going to be, you know, this one's going to bug me because I'm going to want to make it perfect, and I'm just not going to be able to because it's going to take so much time. There's just so many. The more I look, the more I see stuff, and it's just kind of how these were made. And it's very interesting to me because, you know, these were obviously very budget amplifiers compared to a Fender at the time, but I feel like these would be much more labor intensive to build than a Fender. Fender's, you know, fairly simple and easy to train for just going eyelet to eyelet. It's laid out very logically. It's very easy to do. This is just chaos. This I feel like would take somebody a lot more time. You've got all of these ground leads off of the shielded wires that require these little bit of heat shrink so they don't ground themselves out on these terminal strips here. It's just chaos, and I feel like this would be more difficult and more time consuming. So it's kind of interesting to me, the labor side of it. But anyways, yeah. So from here, I do have the parts to swap 3 of the electrolytics. So I'm just going to go ahead and swap those tonight. And then I'll talk to the owner and we'll order the rest of the new parts. So looking forward to it. So we're going to go ahead and start with this cap here. So this is part of the bias circuit. And hopefully you can see there, all of the leads are wrapped around. I said this before multiple times, around each single connection point, which just makes removing anything basically impossible cleanly. You can't just pull it out like you can in a fender with eyelets again. So we're gonna have to cut the ends of it, noting which side obviously goes to which side. And yeah, we're going to probably not be able to remove the existing lead without, I mean, it looks like there's wrapped on top of these leads already. They're all wrapped on top of each other. It's just an absolute mess. So it is what it is. We'll do our best with what we can here, but we're not going to stress, trying to go to the lengths we would for, say, a blackface air fender or something, to where you can actually do the work and cleanly get everything out, remove the solder, and start fresh. That's just not really possible for something like this. So there's my caveats. Let's just go ahead and cut and cut. Remember, positive goes this way. Grab our placement in a second, and let's just see if we can have an idea of what we're working with. Maybe I'm wrong and there is a way to get the old leads out. Let's find out. We'll give it the old college try. All right, wow, I'm gonna zoom in a little bit. Hopefully you guys can see that. There's appears to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, possibly 6 wraparounds here from these existing leads. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 leads there. And I mean, just insane. There's really, you'd have to remove everything and redo it all. I'm not even sure I'm able to get a new lead through, like if there's a hole or something. I'm trying to remove solder just to be able to see if there's a hole available. So yeah, it's tricky, very tricky. So I'm gonna keep at it, but I don't want to cook these resistors or the diodes too much. I don't care about this cap because it's being removed, but I'm gonna add just little clips on them so that they have a little bit of a heat sink. All right, well, I gave myself a hole so I can fit a lead through there. But my goodness, one of these 3 is the lead off of that cap wrapped around, but I can't tell which is which. Looks like they're kind of crossing over each other. It's really hard to tell. So we're not off to a good start with this amplifier. I think this is going to be a massive pain to work on. Let's see if we have any more luck on this side, though I severely doubt it. We're just going to cut this one. I can't tell. It's going to take me too much time to try and find it. All right, here's the removed 100 microfarad 50 volt and the replacement 100 microfarad 100 volt. Get this mocked up here. Now, we're not going to solder this side in yet because obviously we got to get a replacement cap and go in here, and it wouldn't make sense to solder it, then remove solder to add the new one. So we'll just kind of leave it like that, positioned as such. And we'll just bend the lead over and just remember to solder that later. Something like that. But this side we can solder in, even though we might have to do something with the bias, but we don't know that yet. We're just going to assume it's operating okay, and if it's not, there's enough room to swap in a new resistor and not have it be a big deal. So I think we're okay. All right, one cap in. Now let's take care of these cathode bypass caps. Start off by removing again. I mean, this is just a crazy solder joint here from the factory. Ugh, this thing is gonna be tough. So this is a ground connection for a ton of stuff, which is why it's so chaotic in there. So I can't actually ground it elsewhere if I want. For example, I could just go to this ground right here. This ground that's all by itself, and I could just go directly there. So I think I'm going to do that because this is just so much going on here. And that seems like a pretty clean ground, and that's off of the input jacks. Let's just go ahead and cut this because we're not going to be able to get it out. And I think the lead actually is this lead that's cutting from, what is pin 8? Yeah, so pin 8 cathode through pin, was that pin 3? I think this might all be the same lead off of this cap here. So we won't be able to remove that. So instead, what we'll do is cut it, and then I'll kind of bend it over. All right, so we'll just be going like that right there. Pretty simple. Simple, short, easy run. And then this one, similarly, I believe this lead right here is also the lead off the cap, so we will be cutting that and bending it over. All right, let's get the ground connection soldered in here. All right, and with that, phase 1 is complete. So a quick recap, no pun intended. So we've got the new cathode bypass caps here, and then we've got the new bias capacitor here, and we will order these. And I forgot to mention too earlier the can cap. So it was the 2010-5, if I remember correctly. And yeah, I don't remember the voltage values. I can't see it from this angle, but we will be ordering replacements for that as well. And probably I will just get another little terminal strip off of one of these lugs here or here, and run the leads off of that most likely. So where could I do it? Yeah, there's a few different options for us to just add in discrete components. There's enough room to make it work. So we'll figure that out, but I don't think anybody makes a replacement can cap and it's riveted on, which is just gonna be a nightmare. So we're not gonna deal with that. And we will just swap those with discrete components. But yeah, pretty happy with that. Can already tell this amp's gonna be a beast to work on, but hey, we're up for the challenge. So I think we'll end there, and stay tuned for the next episode of this series once the new parts come in.